So okay guys, today's video has been a work in progress, but I'm going to be showing you what goes into prototyping as well as how to make a simple Wemos D1 Mini TV Be Gone. Now for those of you unaware, a TV Be Gone is a device that flashes IR TV power off codes. Basically it's a universal remote, but it brute forces any TV it's aimed at, telling it to turn off, or if it's off, telling it to turn on. Typically, in most commercial kits you can buy, such as the Adafruit kit, you would use an AT Tiny. Now, the Adafruit kit is super simple and easy to build. I'll link it down below in the description, so if you guys don't want to follow this complex video or build the more improved, enhanced version of this device, you can easily buy their kit and assemble that if you just wish to mess around with this. Essentially, like I said, you'd typically use an AT Tiny, although you can use any kind of microcontroller capable of holding the code and blinking essentially an LED on and off. Anything like a USB Pro Micro, a DigiSpark, a Wemos, a Node MCU should work fine. In our particular case, I'm using a Wemos D1 Mini, just for the fact it has dual functionality. If I ever get bored of this device, I can easily reprogram it to act like a wireless deauthenticator, or I can have it act like a server or perhaps even a beacon spammer. However, for the sake of today's video, we're going to be focusing on how you'd wire this up to act like a TV Be Gone. So essentially you want to go over to the GitHub page, download the GitHub code, and you want to flash that over to your Wemos D1 Mini through the Arduino IDE. Now after you got the Wemos D1 Mini programmed, you want to wire it up as so. I'll have a diagram on screen, and in the description I'll include a better diagram. The one on screen right now is probably a bit crude, I just don't have the time to go and make a good diagram right away. But overall it's very easy to understand. Essentially you want to hook up the gate of a MOSFET to a Wemos D1 Mini, in this case the pin D5. Now before you can wire that up directly, you want to include a 1K resistor. This is to prevent damage from overcurrent on the pin D5, thus ensuring that you don't damage your Wemos D1 Mini. You also want a 10K pull down resistor going to ground so that your IR LEDs don't stay on after you push the button. Now you can't see infrared light, so that would be very bad, leaving your IR LEDs stay on the whole time. Essentially, for those of you wondering what a MOSFET is, think of it kind of like a relay. You put in low-level logic signals, in this case coming from our Wemos D1 Mini. It will trip the MOSFET, telling it to turn on a higher current output or a higher current device. Now there are very many kinds of MOSFETs out there that say, at first I thought I had a logic level one because it was working on my breadboard, but it turns out it was not, so I had to order new MOSFETs in order to get this project finally built and finished. But I'll save you guys the hassle and the headache. I'll include all parts down below in the description if you guys wish to buy them in order to assemble your own device. Now what I did was I wired everything according to that diagram, and essentially once I had it on a breadboard, I scanned that in my paper scanner to determine where I want to mount my screws and various other hardware in this device. It also lets me know what the overall dimensions of this thing will be. Now after I did that, I photoshopped around a bit, got a design I think would feel good in my hand, and I got to work. Now at the time I didn't have a digital caliper, so I did all this from a paper scanner, believe it or not. Now I have a digital caliper, so don't worry, I'll be able to improve upon my builds and such. However, to get the height and overall dimensions for this thing, I just essentially lined up something that would be exactly the same thickness as the thing overall, scanned it, and that gave me the determined height for everything inside the unit. I also reused some old parts from the previous Pi 3B Game Boy build. Essentially I took the buttons I didn't use and I wired them up inside this unit, as well as the 3D printed buttons, and I decided to do this just to, save on waste. I didn't want to waste no parts from the previous project, so that's why the button's blue. Anyway, the charging circuit, it came from a salvaged broken 5-volt USB power bank. It wasn't labeled, but I'm guessing it's 1 amp output only, which explains the brightness of the IR LEDs. Now don't get me wrong, it's still brighter than what you would get in a typical TV Be Gone kit that you could buy, but these things could be way, way brighter, trust me. Now one way we can go about fixing that would be just to use a different charging circuit, or has a different output, higher or so, maybe in amps or in voltage, and that should fix the problem. Typically when you're flashing this thing on and off, it ain't on for that long, so we don't really need to worry about a heatsink when it comes to using this thing. Anyway, that's about it for this video. As you can see, I took a basic proof of concept remote that I made and improved it to make it a lot sleeker and overall a lot more efficient. Anyway guys, if you do replicate this project and you need help, just let me know down below in the comments and I'll help you out to the best of my ability. But I think for now I covered basically everything I needed to cover with this project, and I think I'm gonna leave it off here. DTPK signing off. Peace. Twitter quotes. Basically you copy this, paste it in, end quote it, hit itself. It can be successfully uploaded to sites like DeviantArt, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you wish.